English Grammar, Lesson 25. Topic: Articles with languages, countries, and nationalities. This is a lesson in two parts. In part 1, we'll focus on learning the guidelines. Is there a friend you really admire? I admire my friend Yuko. She's from Japan. Although she's Japanese, she speaks English very well. I admire Yuko not only because she's so good with languages, but also because she's a good person. I love having conversations with her because she's funny and she's also a very good listener. I've asked Yuko to join me in this lesson and help you learn when we use articles with countries, languages, and nationalities. Listening Task 1. Pay attention to the use of articles with languages. Yuko, I'd love to tell you how much I admire your English. I think your English is so very good.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Can you tell me though, I know Japanese is your native language. You speak English. Do you speak any other languages?
Yes, I actually also speak a little bit of Spanish.
That's right, that's right. That's 3 languages. Wow. Languages need no article if used alone. For example, Yuko speaks Japanese. She also knows Spanish. We use a zero article, no article, before Japanese and Spanish. This is the most common pattern, especially after verbs like speak, know, understand. However, if you use the word language, then we use the definite article. As in, the Japanese language is very complex. Listening Task 2. Pay attention to the use of articles with countries. How did you come to know 3 languages?
I learned my English when I went to an international school growing up in Japan. I picked up Spanish when I studied abroad in Spain for a year.
Okay. Most countries need no article. For example, Yuko is from Japan. She studied in Spain. We use a zero article, no article, before Japan and Spain. However, some countries need a definite article, and I'll talk about myself for a moment to give you a few examples. Jennifer lives in the U.S. She took a trip to the Soviet Union in 1989. She worked in the Bahamas after college. United States, Soviet Union, Bahamas, these are 3 examples of countries that need a definite article. The general guideline is that kingdoms, republics, unions, and countries with names that are plural, like Bahamas, require a definite article. Listening Task 3. Pay attention to the use of articles with nationalities. Okay. Your English, though, is so American. You studied English in Japan, but to my ears it's very American. So who were your teachers?
My teachers when I was in elementary school, especially 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, were Americans.
Okay.
And I think that's where I definitely picked up my American accent.
Okay. Now, you said you spent a whole year in Spain.
Yes.
Right. Did you study and live then in a dormitory, or where did you live?
No, actually, I lived with a Spanish family.
So you've spent time in 3 cultures. You've been in the United States, so you know the American culture, you obviously know the Japanese culture, and you've had some time in Spain, so you know the Spanish culture. Can you tell me some differences among these cultures? Like, what makes an American different from a Spaniard, or a Spaniard different from someone from Japan? What's the difference between the Japanese and the Spanish, or the Spanish and Americans?
The one easy difference between the Japanese and Americans are that the Japanese, I think, are a little more reserved. They tend to be a little more private. You really need to get to know them before they start opening up to you. I think Americans and Spaniards are similar in that they are very friendly. But just like the Japanese, I think you really do need to get to know a Spanish person better before they really truly open up. I feel that the Americans are most open in terms of being friendly to people. You really can strike a conversation in an elevator, and that would not happen in Japan.
Right, right. Agree.
Many nationalities have one form that is both an adjective and a noun. For example, Jennifer is an American. She married a Russian. Here, American and Russian are being used as nouns, singular nouns. One. I'm identifying myself as one American. I'm identifying my husband as one Russian. Let's look at the second half of this statement. Her husband learned that an American wife wasn't exactly like a Russian wife. Here, the words American and Russian are being used as adjectives. We're describing the noun wife. So the same form is being used both as an adjective and as a noun, a singular noun. You can look at the ending and see a pattern. American, Russian. AN is the ending. So this pattern will hold true for other nationalities, such as Brazilian, Canadian, Australian. However, you need to understand that some nationalities don't have the same forms for adjectives and nouns. Let's compare people from the United States to people from Japan, so you understand this point. Jennifer is American. Yuko is Japanese. American, Japanese are adjectives. Now let's look at singular nouns. She's an American. I can use the same form and simply use an indefinite article to say one American. Can I do this with Japanese? No. It is not correct to say she's a Japanese. I have to use the adjective plus another noun. She's a Japanese woman, or simply she's Japanese. Let's look at the plural nouns. What are Americans like? Again, I took the same form and I simply added a plural ending, S. Can I do this with Japanese? No. It is incorrect to say what are Japaneses like. I could say what are the Japanese like, using the definite article. Here's a tip. With all nationalities, you can simply use the adjective plus the word people. What are American people like? What are Japanese people like? Let's talk more about the pattern you just saw with Japanese. You saw the definite article plus an adjective to refer to a whole group. In other words, the before the adjective form of a nationality can refer to the whole population. But this pattern is limited to these endings, "-ese", "-s", "-ish", or "ch". Examples include the Chinese, the Swiss, the Irish, the Dutch. Unlike nationalities such as Americans, Canadians, and Russians, we cannot simply add an S. We can't say Chineses, Swisses, Irishes, and Dutches. The alternative is to use the plus the adjective, the Chinese, the Swiss, the Irish, the Dutch. Let's talk about making generic references, that is, referring to the whole group and not one particular person or people within the group. With nationalities that have a plural noun form, you can use a zero or definite article to make a generic reference. Here are two examples. Russians love good conversation. The Russians were the first to put a man in space. In both sentences, I have the same plural noun, Russians. In the first, I used a zero article, no article, and in the second I chose to use the definite article, the. Both sentences refer to Russians as a whole group. In the first sentence, I'm talking about a characteristic that the whole group shares. In general, all people of this nationality love good conversation. In the second sentence, I'm referring to the whole population. I'm talking about what all the people of this country achieve together. I feel that pattern with the definite article plus the plural noun is very common, especially in the context of history, such as the first to put a man in space. Now let's talk about making specific references. You always need a definite article to make a specific reference. For example, the Americans did well at the Winter Olympics in Vancouver and brought home a number of gold medals. Here, I'm not talking about all Americans, the whole group of Americans, but a specific number of Americans, the athletes that participated in these games. Finally, let me call attention to some special noun forms. Often among nationalities ending in "-es", "-s", "-ish", and "ch" are special singular noun forms. For example, people from Finland can be referred to as the Finnish, but one person is a Finn. People from France we can call the French, but one person is a Frenchman. People from Poland can be referred to as the Polish, but one person is a Pole. People from Spain can be referred to as the Spanish, but one person is a Spaniard. And the people in Sweden can be called the Swedish, but one person is a Swede. My first piece of advice is to consult a dictionary if you're not certain about the noun form. The second piece of advice is you can never be wrong by simply using the adjective or the adjective plus a noun. You can talk about a Finnish person or simply say he or she is Finnish. This is the end of Part 1. Before you go on to Part 2, please know that additional practice is available at EnglishCafe.com. My username is Jennifer ESL. Follow the direct link listed in the video description. Check out the exercise I have there and then go on to Part 2.